You can hold the whole known world in your fist and still be someone else's puppet. Picture yourself walking the cold marble of the Palatine Hill in the year 54 AD. You are the master of Rome. Entire legions stand frozen, waiting for you to exhale. The fate of millions sits in the ink of your signet ring. And yet, the moment you lower yourself onto that throne to sign a single decree, you can feel it. A gaze, heavy, patient, drilling into the base of your skull. The senators never quite look at you. Their eyes drift over your shoulder. The praetorians do not move until they catch the smallest gesture from the woman who never speaks, but always watches. This is the secret of a boy crowned with the earth, who wakes up one morning and understands that his mother never actually gave it to him. She only lent it. And the most dangerous animal in the empire is not hiding in some forest on the edge of the world. It is sleeping 3 doors down the hallway. What you are about to watch is not a simple story of betrayal. This is the dissection of a psychological cage, built bone by bone. Forget the cheap image of poison in a wine cup and knives behind curtains. We are going to open up a woman who did not raise a son. She forged a blade. You will see, step by step, how a master of manipulation hollows out a man from the inside, until nothing is left rattling in his chest, except fear. The corridors shrink. The smiles get sharper. A silent war catches fire inside a palace gilded in gold and rotten underneath. And it all ends with a machine sinking into the black salt of the Mediterranean, swallowing the hand that rocked the cradle. Because when the sculptor will not let the statue step off the pedestal and breathe, the only sculpture left to make is her tomb. Before we walk into the darkness of the Palatine together, I need to know who came with me tonight. Drop a comment right now with the city and country you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and stand behind this project so we can keep pulling these buried stories back into the light. You are watching Ancestral, the best dark history channel in the world. The first silver light of dawn cuts through the narrow slits carved high into the stone of the Palatine Palace. It falls in thin blades across the room, landing on the bare shoulders of a 17-year-old boy perched on the edge of a bed draped in dark silk. The world knows him by one of the longest names in the aristocracy of Rome, Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus. The centuries will forget that name entirely. They will only remember one word: Nero. He pulls the cold air into his lungs. He listens to the sound bleeding through the thick oak of his bedroom door, a slow, deliberate rhythm of iron striking stone. Those footsteps belong to the Praetorian Guard, the Empire's most lethal soldiers, hand-picked to protect the sacred body of the Emperor. They are not loyal to him. They obey their prefect, a man called Sextus Afranius Burrus. And Burrus, in turn, bends his knee to the woman asleep 3 rooms down the corridor. Nero owns every road from Hispania to Syria. He cannot even decide when to open his eyes. Agrippina the Younger does not bother with the courtesy of knocking. She walks into her son's private chamber before the first servant can arrive with the silver basin of morning water. She adjusts the folds of his toga herself. Her fingers pause near the soft skin of his throat as she smooths the heavy wool. She recites the points he must raise in the upcoming session of the Senate while he sits there staring through the mosaic on the floor. He nods at the correct moments. He repeats back the exact phrasing she drilled into him the night before, word for word, syllable for syllable. What you are watching is not a mother dressing her child. It is a technician calibrating a weapon. She built this boy through 30 years of exile, blood, and calculated marriages. She is not here to love him. She is here to collect on the debt. To understand the hook she has buried in his skull, you have to understand the cost of putting him on that mattress in the first place. Agrippina was born inside a slaughterhouse built of marble. She watched her own brothers waste away on prison rocks in the middle of the sea, their bodies turning to skin and bone because a tyrant refused to feed them. She survived the reign of her lunatic brother, the Emperor Caligula, the man who laughed as he signed death warrants on his family members. She was shipped off to a wind-lashed island in the Mediterranean, stripped of her rank and left to rot. She dove into the freezing salt water with her bare hands to pull sponges off the rocks, selling them to merchants just to stay alive another week. When she finally dragged herself back to the capital, she did something no Roman woman had ever dared. She seduced her own uncle, the reigning Emperor Claudius. She then bent the ancient legal code of Rome backwards until the Senate rewrote the laws of incest, just so the wedding could happen in public. That woman did not claw her way out of hell to stand quietly behind her son's chair. She laid the bricks of his road to the throne with the bodies of anyone in the way. The last stone she needed was her own husband. October, AD 54. Claudius sat down to a banquet like any other. Agrippina had already made her arrangements with a woman named Locusta, a Gaulish specialist who had built an entire career around killing in ways that left no footprint. Locusta had distilled the aconite plant down to its purest lethal essence, a poison that could stop the lungs without a sound. Agrippina gave a quiet instruction to the household servants. They drizzled the compound over a plate of boletus mushrooms, his favorite dish. Claudius ate them. The alkaloid began shutting down his nervous system from the inside. When his body finally tried to expel it, when he gagged and reached for a way to vomit, his personal physician stepped forward with a feather dipped in a fast-acting purgative called colocynth. He pushed that feather down the emperor's throat and guaranteed the poison would go no further than his blood. Claudius choked to death, drowning in the fluid of his own body. Agrippina stood nearby and watched him die. She did not weep. She did not flinch. She counted seconds. Nero knows exactly what those hands smoothing his toga have done. The psychological cage starts with something invisible, information itself. The cursus publicus was the bloodstream of the empire. Fast riders on the paved military roads galloping in from the cliffs of Britannia, the deserts of Syria, the dark forests at the Rhine. They arrived at the Palatine Hill with leather satchels stuffed with troop movements, grain prices, reports of mutiny. They handed those satchels to a ring of Greek freedmen who officially served the palace. Nero never saw a single wax seal still intact. Every scroll that reached his cedar writing desk had already been broken, read, and resealed with a different hand. Agrippina sees the empire before her son does. She decides which truths reach him and which ones never exist. She reads the desperate letters from provincial governors begging for help. She composes the replies herself. Nero holds the reed pen. She holds his wrist. He signs orders that send strangers to their execution. He signs new taxes that will cave in the bellies of cities whose names he cannot pronounce. He can feel something hollow opening inside his ribcage, widening by the day. He starts to understand that being emperor of the world means nothing if you are not the hand on the lever. He is a ghost living in his own palace. The Senate of Rome is not fooled. Not for a single afternoon. The Curia. Julia is a theater of silver-haired men and ancient fortunes, and those men can read a room better than any army can read a battlefield. They file in wearing their pale wool togas. Nero takes the elevated ivory chair. He reads speeches lavishing his mother with praise for her unmatched virtue, her generosity, her wisdom. The senators applaud in perfect time. They exchange the smallest glances whenever Agrippina's covered litter is set down in the forum outside. Roman law forbids her from setting foot on the Senate floor. She found a loophole. She has them draw a thin curtain across a side entrance, and she sits behind it. She listens to every word of every debate. When a senator says something she dislikes, her silhouette shifts behind the fabric, and the whole room sees it move. The senators are addressing the boy emperor on the ivory throne. Their real audience is the shadow behind the curtain. The proof of his captivity is pressed into silver and handed out across the empire. A few months into his reign, the imperial mint releases a new denarius. Merchants and soldiers pluck it from the trays in the forum, and they notice something that has never happened before in the history of Rome. The face of the ruler is supposed to stand alone on the front of the coin. On this one, Nero's profile has been shoved to the side. His mother's face is pressed right up against his, both of them looking the same way, sharing the same metal, the same space. In some provincial mints, her name is even stamped before his. It is not subtle. It is a public declaration that the Mediterranean now has two rulers. The leash snaps tight in full view of the world during a diplomatic crisis in AD 54. A delegation rides in from the Kingdom of Armenia to negotiate a border dispute that is one wrong sentence away from war. The Parthian Empire is watching every move. The ambassadors are escorted into the grand reception hall of the Palatine. Nero is already seated on his raised platform, flanked by his advisors, polished and rehearsed. Then the heavy bronze doors swing wide open. Agrippina walks in wearing a mantle embroidered with threads of solid gold. She passes the silent row of praetorians without slowing. She steps onto the marble of the dais. She is coming to sit beside her son and personally negotiate with a foreign power as his equal. There is no precedent for what she is about to do. The ambassadors lock into place like statues. The room stops breathing. Nobody dares intervene. Standing near the fluted columns is Lucius Annaeus Seneca, Stoic philosopher, former tutor, chief architect of the new regime. He sees the catastrophe unfolding in real time. He knows exactly what will happen. The Armenian delegation will gallop back home and report to their king that Rome is now ruled by a woman, and within months, Parthian cavalry will be riding across the eastern provinces. Seneca moves quickly. He leans to the emperor and whispers a single instruction. Stand up. Walk down the steps. Greet your mother before she reaches the platform. Make it look like love. Nero obeys the philosopher. He rises from his throne. He walks down the marble stairs and opens his arms to embrace her. He blocks her path with affection. The diplomatic disaster is smothered before anyone can name it out loud. The shame of it stays forever. The Emperor of Rome just surrendered his own seat to stop his mother from sitting on half of it. He smiles politely at the Armenians. His jaw is clenched so hard the molars grind against each other. He can feel the invisible chain pulling tighter around his throat. Nero starts looking for somewhere he can breathe. He does not find it in politics. He does not find it on the battlefield. He finds it in music. He orders lyres brought to his private chambers. He pays Greek musicians from Neapolis enormous sums to teach him the complicated scales of the East. He rides across the Tiber to the Vatican plain and demands lessons in chariot racing. He learns to grip the leather reins of 4 horses at full gallop. He leans into the turns. He pushes the wheels to the very edge of disaster. He feels the wind cut across his face. He feels, briefly, like he is the one deciding what happens next. This is not a bored prince chasing thrills. This is a prisoner searching for any square inch of territory he can call his own. When he drives the chariot, he picks the line. When he plucks a gut string, he picks the note. These are the only two corners of his existence where his mother's voice is not the one giving the orders. Agrippina loathes all of it. She sees it as a sickness. She carries the blood of Augustus Caesar in her veins. She murdered her way across 3 decades to put a conqueror on the throne. What she got instead was a musician, a performer, a boy who wants to be applauded. She humiliates him in the hallways of the palace. She mimics his singing voice in front of the kitchen slaves. She reminds him every single day that he wears the purple only because she killed for it. Her entire strategy depends on one assumption, that guilt and fear will be enough to keep him manageable. She is making a fatal mistake. She has no idea how hot the inside of a caged human mind can get before something ignites. The first spark has a name: Claudia Acti. Acti is a former slave, brought to Rome from somewhere in Asia Minor. She is quiet. She does not care about grain shipments from Alexandria or the latest proposal on tax reform. She does not look at Nero as an instrument. She looks at him like he is a man. In AD 55, he begins a secret, obsessive affair with her. Seneca and Burrus find out almost immediately. They do not shut it down. They feed it. They recognize what Acti really is. She is a wedge. She is the first tool they have found that can be hammered between the emperor and his mother. They arrange the quiet meetings in discreet villas outside the city. For the first time in his life, Nero makes a personal choice his mother never signed off on. He breathes in independence for the first time. It tastes like oxygen to a drowning man. Agrippina finds out. The walls of the palace shake with the sound of her voice. She storms into his private dining room mid-meal. She screams that a former slave is contaminating the imperial bed. She hurls silver plates against the mosaic floor. Her rage has nothing to do with virtue or decency. It has everything to do with access. Another woman is sleeping next to her son, and that other woman is not feeding him Agrippina's lines. The grid is cracking. The leash is slipping out of her fist. Overnight, she changes her entire approach. The screaming stops. Something worse begins. Agrippina decides to become her son's partner in the affair. She offers him her own private bedroom for his nights with Acti. She opens her personal treasury to fund whatever gifts he wants to give the girl. She is trying to buy her way back to the center of his life. When that fails, she tries to reassert herself through wealth. Nero sends her a stunning collection of jewels that had belonged to the wives of previous emperors. Instead of thanking him, she complains, publicly, that what he gave her is a fraction of what she already owns. It is surgical. It is a reminder, said in front of witnesses, that everything he has, she lent him. Nero counterstrikes. He removes Marcus Antonius Pallas from office. Pallas ran the imperial treasury. Pallas was also Agrippina's closest political ally, and, according to palace gossip, her lover. By firing him, Nero severs his mother's access to the money of the state. The war between them becomes visible. Agrippina responds with a threat that freezes his blood solid in his veins. She reminds him that Britannicus is still breathing. Britannicus is the biological son of the Emperor Claudius. He is weeks away from his 14th birthday. By the oldest Roman tradition, the blood tradition, he is the real heir. Agrippina declares openly that she will walk into the camp of the Praetorian Guard with Britannicus by her side. She will present him to the soldiers. She will confess to the murder of Claudius on her own tongue. She is willing to burn down everything she built if her son refuses to obey her. She is telling him, to his face, that she will tear out her own creation and plant a more obedient one in his place. Nero understands. He is standing on a trapdoor, and she is holding the lever. He moves with a speed that nobody expected from him. A handful of days before Britannicus is set to come of age, the imperial family gathers for dinner. Britannicus is served a hot drink. A food taster samples it first and lives. Britannicus complains that the drink is too hot to swallow. A servant pours in cold water to cool it. That cold water has been laced with a perfected version of Locusta's poison. Britannicus drinks. He drops almost instantly. His body twists on the dining couch. His eyes roll back into his skull. His chest stops moving. Agrippina watches the boy die 3 feet away from her. The color drains out of her face in real time. She sits there frozen, paralyzed, unable to move her hands or speak a word. For the first time in her adult life, she is staring at a creature she cannot steer. Nero keeps eating, calm, unhurried. He turns to his guests and casually remarks that the boy must be having an epileptic seizure, nothing more. The message he sends across that dinner table lands in his mother's chest, like an arrow. Your replacement is dead. Your backup plan is a corpse. And the student you trained has now surpassed the teacher. After that night, the suffocation takes on a new shape. It becomes physical. It becomes a thing with texture. Ancient sources start recording a whispered, taboo rumor that spreads through the Palatine like a fungus. Agrippina, sensing she is losing him to other women entirely, begins attending his private drinking parties dressed in sheer, almost transparent fabrics. She sits pressed against him on the dining couches. She leans into his ear while the wine keeps pouring. The rumor whispered in the corridors is that she is now offering him her own body as a final attempt to hold on to the keys of the empire. Nero is sickened. He cannot meet her eyes. He orders extra guards to stand inside his bedroom while he sleeps. He hires a food taster to sample every dish at every meal. The Palatine stops being a palace. It becomes a fortified prison with one inmate. Then the final match is struck. Her name is Poppaea Sabina. She was born into the highest aristocracy. Her hair is the color of dark amber. Her mind is colder and sharper than a blade of Iberian steel. She is married to one of Nero's closest friends, a man named Otho. She attends a banquet at the palace. She does not look at Nero with the submissive gaze of a former slave like Acte. She does not look at him with the devouring stare of his mother. She looks at him the way a falcon looks down at an open field. She studies the exact shape of the wound inside his chest. She decides, that very night, that she is going to be the one to fill it. Poppaea runs a seduction that is closer to a military campaign. She denies him her bed in the beginning. She reminds him that she is a married woman. She tells him softly that he is just a boy, running errands for his mother. She presses her finger down on the exact nerve that has been torturing him for years. She tells him to prove he is a sovereign. She will not settle for being hidden in a villa. She wants the title of Empress, written down, made law, engraved on silver. She offers him a trade no woman has ever offered him before. Make her his wife, and in return, she will worship him like a living god. She will treat every word out of his mouth as prophecy. She paints him a vision of an empire where he speaks and the seas themselves go still. He listens. He listens like a man who has been starving his whole life. If you can feel the walls closing in, If you recognize the dark psychology running under every inch of this history, then you belong with us. Pause the video right now and find the Join button just below this screen. That button is your entry into the lineage. This is not a passive subscription. By joining, you step inside the inner circle of the project. You become part of the actual engine that builds these deep, long-form investigations. Our members are the reason the research goes deep, the reason the scripts stay honest, the reason the lights stay on. They get early access to every nightmare we uncover before the rest of the world sees it. If you feel you are one of us, step into the ranks today. Help us keep dragging the buried past into the living present. Nero holds up both women side by side in his mind. Agrippina tells him he is nothing without her. Baiae tells him he is the reason the sun rises. Agrippina pushes scrolls into his hand for his signature. Baiae puts the shape of absolute masculinity into his chest. The decision is not even intellectual at this point. It is biological. It is gravitational. The leash that has been wrapped around his throat for 19 years begins to unravel, strand by strand. He starts spending his nights at Baiae's villa. They sit beside the reflecting pool. They speak in low voices about a future neither of them has yet drawn on parchment. There is only one obstacle standing in the way of that future. Agrippina will never permit a divorce. She will never hand over the title of Empress Mother without a war. Nero begins pacing the marble floors of his study alone at night. He runs his fingertips over the eagles carved into the stone columns. He does the math. He cannot negotiate with her. He cannot exile her. She has too many senators in her pocket. He cannot throw her in a dungeon. The mob loves her. She is the daughter of Germanicus, one of the most beloved generals in Roman memory. As long as she keeps breathing, there are two emperors inside the same palace, and the empire has never been able to stomach two heads on the same neck. One of them has to come off. The boy who used to play the lyre starts thinking like a man preparing an execution order. He summons his most trusted military officers in the middle of the night. They gather in his private chambers under the flickering orange of the torches. They expect him to announce a campaign against some barbarian tribe on the edge of the world. Instead, Nero looks each one of them directly in the eye, and he speaks a single sentence. A sentence that will bend the entire history of the Roman Empire off its axis forever. The death of Britannicus changes the chemistry of the air itself. When a boy drops dead mid-meal and the host of the dinner keeps slicing into his roasted boar without so much as a twitch in his hand, the rule book for the entire palace gets rewritten in silence. Agrippina absorbs that message faster than anyone. Her son has stepped across a line nobody knew existed. He is no longer the soft teenager who walked down the marble steps to stop her from taking half of his throne in front of foreign ambassadors. He is something new. He is a predator discovering the weight of his own teeth. The Palatine Hill ceases to function as a home. It becomes a forest at dusk, and inside it, both mother and son are simultaneously stalking and being stalked. Nero strikes where her power actually lives. He goes for her physical protection. Ever since the days of Augustus, the women of the imperial family have been shadowed by a specialized unit nobody in Rome dares to approach. The numerus Batavorum, giant Germanic warriors pulled from the tribes along the Rhine, men with pale hair and scars older than the emperor himself. These soldiers do not swear loyalty to whoever sits on the throne. They swear loyalty to the blood of Germanicus. That is her bloodline. They shadow her litter through the forum. They stand outside her bedroom with unsheathed broadswords resting against their shoulders. Their very existence is a public announcement that she is untouchable. Nero writes a single decree and changes everything. He disbands her Germanic escort. He strips her of the wall of muscle and steel that has kept her separated from the filth of the Roman streets for years. One morning, a military tribune walks into her quarters without bowing. He does not greet her. He places a sealed scroll in her hand. It is signed with the imperial ring. It is, in plain language, an eviction notice. The Emperor of Rome is formally throwing his own mother out of the palace. Try to picture that descent for a moment. Agrippina is ordered to pack up her life. She walks down the Clivus Palatinus, with her servants carrying chests behind her, leaving behind the marble colonnades, leaving behind the literal center of global authority. She relocates to the house of Antonia, a large but isolated private estate on the outskirts of everything that matters. She is no longer the Empress Mother ruling the known world from the summit. She is now a wealthy widow in the suburbs. Physically, the distance is a short walk. Politically, she has been exiled to the edge of the universe. In Rome, relevance is not measured in gold or titles. It is measured every single morning in a ritual called the salutatio. At dawn, the great doors of powerful men swing open, and hundreds of clients, senators, favor seekers, debtors, and hangers-on flood into the courtyard to beg, bribe, or simply be seen standing near greatness. For the previous 5 years, the crowd outside Agrippina's door spilled out into the streets. People came before sunrise just to fight for a place in the line. Now she opens the doors of the house of Antonia, and what greets her is nothing. No bodies, no murmurs, only the wind coming off the Tiber. The political class of Rome has a nose sharper than any hunting dog. They can smell a dying regime from across the city. The same senators who used to kiss the hem of her stola suddenly discover urgent business in other neighborhoods. The Greek freedmen who used to deliver her the imperial correspondence now avoid her eye when they pass her in the street. Her doorway stays empty. For a woman whose bloodstream is built on adrenaline, on total control, this quiet is not silence. It is a specific kind of torture. The Romans had a word for it: damnatio memoriae, the official erasure of a person from history. The catch is that it is usually applied to the dead. In Agrippina's case, she is being erased while still breathing. Nero pulled it off. He removed the architect of the cage. The problem is that the victory brings him zero peace. Freedom starts to feel identical to having a target drawn on his back. He knows the woman sitting in the house of Antonia. He knows exactly what she is capable of because he watched her dismantle powerful men from the time he was a child. Insomnia takes him. He paces the empty corridors of the Palatine at night. He stares at the flickering light thrown off the bronze braziers against the walls, searching every shadow for the glint of an assassin's blade. He demands that his personal chefs taste his food twice. He drinks only from sealed amphorae that never left his sight. He understands one thing with total clarity. As long as her heart keeps beating across town, his own life is on a countdown. His paranoia gets its justification in AD 55. The Cold War briefly erupts into open fire. A bitter rival of Agrippina, a noblewoman called Junia Silana, smells the emperor's fear and decides to feed it. She builds a conspiracy out of thin air. She sends informants to Nero with a terrifying story. They claim Agrippina is seducing a man named Rubellius Plautus. Plautus happens to carry a direct bloodline to the Emperor Tiberius. The accusation lands like a blade. Agrippina is supposedly forging a new emperor in the shadows. and she intends to launch a coup to put him on the throne over her own son's corpse. Nero hears it and loses himself completely. He howls for his guards. He orders that Agrippina be dragged out into the courtyard and executed on the spot. No trial, no hearing, no appeal. He orders Plautus killed too. He is operating on raw animal fear. Seneca and Burrus have to physically step into his path. Burrus, the prefect of the Praetorian Guard, plants his body between the emperor and the door he is trying to walk through. He forces the boy to inhale and exhale. He reminds him slowly that executing the daughter of Germanicus without a proper hearing will trigger a mutiny across every legion on the frontier. The legions love her father's memory more than they love any sitting emperor. Burrus volunteers to go himself. He offers to walk into the house of Antonia and interrogate her personally. What happens next is the reason Agrippina is still remembered as the most dangerous political operator the Mediterranean ever produced. Burrus shows up with an armed escort. He reads her the charges of high treason out loud. A lesser noblewoman would collapse in tears. A lesser noblewoman would open her veins in the warm bath to spare her family the humiliation of a public trial. Agrippina does neither. She does not even bother defending herself. She goes on the attack. She locks eyes with Burrus. She reminds him out loud of where he came from. She tells him he was a mid-ranking officer, a nobody. Before she personally placed the command of the Praetorian Guard in his hand, she turns her gaze to Seneca, standing nearby. She reminds the great philosopher that he was rotting on the island of Corsica when she dragged him back to the capital. "My son may have handed you your titles," she tells them. "I gave you the empire itself." She takes apart her accusers piece by piece. She exposes the cracks in their conspiracy with the cold precision of a prosecutor. She speaks with the terrifying calm of a woman who knows exactly where every body in Rome is buried, because she is the one who buried most of them with her own hands. Burrus returns to the Palatine. He informs Nero, flatly, that the accusations are worthless. The emperor is forced to publicly clear his mother's name. He is forced to exile Junia Silana. He is forced to have the informants executed as liars. Agrippina walks out of the trap untouched. She is legally cleared. But something inside the regime is permanently broken. The mask is gone. Both sides understand now that there is nothing left to negotiate. They are locked in a game where only one of them is walking out alive. The deadlock drags on for 4 grinding years. From AD 55 to AD 59, mother and son perform a grotesque piece of theater for the Roman public. They attend the gladiatorial games together and wave at the crowds. They exchange lavish gifts during the festival of Saturnalia. They smile at each other across banquet tables. Beneath the dignified surface, they are 2 scorpions sealed inside the same glass jar, each one waiting for the other to lower its tail for a single second too long. If you actually want to understand the dark mechanics running under this era, surface history will never take you deep enough. You need the primary source, the raw material. Look at your screen right now and tap the View Products button. I have placed the exact book that forms the backbone of today's script on the shelf for you. It is a brutal, unapologetic archive of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, written by a hand that refused to soften the worst of it. If you want to feel the real temperature of the paranoia that was freezing the Palatine Hill, you need that book in your possession. While you are there, walk the rest of the shop. We keep a rotating vault of dark memorabilia and collector pieces for the people who want to live inside this world instead of just visiting it. Open the shop, secure the book, build the collection, and then come back and descend with us. The fragile balance finally shatters in AD 59. The match that lights the fuse is Poppaea Sabina. She has run out of patience with the waiting room. She sees the first strands of gray appearing in Nero's hair. She sees him hesitate. She begins a methodical campaign of psychological pressure. She laughs at his cowardice. She tells him softly that foreign kings in Parthia and Armenia are telling jokes at banquets about the Roman emperor, who still has to ask his mother for permission before he takes a wife. She sharpens every insecurity he has. She demands that he cut the cord once and for all. Nero finally makes the call. Agrippina has to die. The empress mother must be erased. But deciding to kill her is the easy part of the equation. Actually executing that contract is an engineering problem of nightmarish proportions. He begins running through his options. A public execution is out of the question. The Roman mob still worships the memory of her father, Germanicus. If a single praetorian steps forward in broad daylight and drives a blade through her chest, the citizens will riot in the streets. Worse, the legions stationed in Germania will put on their marching boots and come south to avenge her blood. The killing has to be entirely covert. It cannot carry a signature. It cannot be traceable. Poison is the traditional weapon of his family line. Nero summons Locusta, the queen of untraceable death, the same woman who killed Claudius. He demands a compound that will stop his mother's heart while she sleeps. Locusta refuses him. She tells the emperor to his face that chemistry will not work on Agrippina. The reason is surgical. Agrippina has spent her entire life studying the technique of murder from both sides. She anticipated this exact moment decades ago. She practices a medical regimen the Greeks called mithridatism. Every morning, before she eats a single piece of bread or sips a drop of water, she swallows a carefully measured paste. That paste contains microscopic quantities of hemlock, arsenic, aconite, and snake venom. Over the years, her body has built a total biological tolerance to the most lethal substances in the Mediterranean world. She is, for all practical purposes, immune. You could dump a killing dose of nightshade into her Falernian wine, and she would simply hold out the cup and ask for a refill. A staged robbery on the road gets dismissed just as fast. Agrippina never travels without a heavily armed retinue of loyal slaves and clients. Any gang of street thugs sent to ambush her litter would be cut to pieces before they ever reached the curtains. Nero hits a wall. He cannot stab her. He cannot poison her. He cannot ambush her on the road. Every method he considers leaves a human fingerprint, and a human fingerprint traces back to him. He needs something else. He needs the killing to look as if the gods themselves had done it. He needs a structural failure. He needs an accident of nature. He needs something that leaves no soldier to interrogate, no assassin to bribe into silence. Deliverance comes from the sea. Nero summons Anicetus. Anicetus is a Greek freedman, at this point serving as prefect of the imperial fleet stationed at Misenum on the Bay of Naples. More importantly, Anicetus was the emperor's childhood tutor. He carries inside him a thick, ancient hatred for Agrippina, who used to humiliate him mercilessly during the years he spent trying to educate her son. Anicetus listens to the emperor's dilemma. His mouth slowly curls into a smile. He is a master of naval engineering. He offers Nero a mechanical solution to what the emperor has been treating as a biological problem. Anicetus proposes building a custom ship. From the outside, it will look like a magnificent imperial pleasure barge. Brightly painted frescoes along the hull. Silk sails catching the Mediterranean sun. the kind of vessel a devoted son would gift to a beloved mother. But the skeleton of the ship will be designed to fail catastrophically on command. Anicetus walks the emperor through the blueprint. The heavy lead canopy suspended above the main deck will be held in place by hollow wooden pins, rigged so they can be snapped on a signal. When the ropes are pulled by a crew that has been paid in advance, the entire canopy will collapse downward, crushing anyone sleeping or reclining beneath it. And in case the canopy somehow fails to finish the job, the hull itself will have a hidden hinge mechanism built into its midsection. When the primary bolts are drawn at the right moment, the ship will split cleanly in half and sink like a stone into the black water. Nero approves the design without hesitation. He gives Anicetus an unlimited budget and absolute secrecy. The shipwrights at Misenum work under the cover of night. Bronze fittings are hammered into place in the dark. Lebanese cedar is sawed into shape by hands sworn to silence. A floating coffin is slowly built, disguised as a luxury vessel. Every trap needs bait. The bait arrives in March of AD 59. The Roman world is preparing to celebrate the Quinquatria, the 5-day festival dedicated to Minerva. The imperial court relocates south to the luxury resort town of Baiae on the Bay of Naples. Baiae is the playground of the ultra-wealthy. Volcanic hot springs bubbling up through the rocks. Sprawling cliffside villas looking down on the sea. Banquets that run until dawn. Sins that Rome is too polite to name. Nero sits down to write his mother a letter. The tone is meticulously crafted. Apologetic. Submissive. The voice of a son who is ready to humble himself. He invites her to leave the loneliness of the house of Antonia behind, come south to Baiae, and use the festival of Minerva as an occasion to rebuild the bond that has been broken between them. He writes, carefully, that a mother's anger is a natural thing, and that a son has a duty to endure the temper of the woman who brought him into the world. Agrippina reads the parchment with a cold eye. This is a woman who communicates almost entirely through deception. She recognizes a lie in the same way a sommelier recognizes a flaw in a wine. She knows her son hates her. She knows he wants her buried. But the invitation presents her with a strategic opportunity she cannot pass up. If she refuses, she stays isolated and irrelevant forever. If she accepts, she regains physical access to the emperor. She believes, deep in her bones, that her mind is sharper than his. She believes she can read whatever trap he has built and walk straight through it. She is a gambler to the core, and the pot on the table is the Roman Empire. She orders her servants to pack her trunks. She boards a Liburnian galley and sails down the Italian coast. She puts in at Bauli, a small port just south of Baiae. Nero is waiting for her on the docks when she arrives. He plays the part of the repentant son with a performer's precision. He embraces her in front of the assembled crowds so everyone can see the reconciliation happening in public. He holds both of her hands. He personally escorts her to a lavish waterfront villa he has prepared for her arrival. Then, very casually, he gestures to the water. Moored at the dock is the magnificent custom-built galley. The fresh, polished wood gleams in the late afternoon light. The silk pennants snap in the sea breeze. Nero tells his mother that the ship is a gift. A symbol, he says, of her restored place at his side. He invites her to join him that evening for a grand reconciliation banquet at his estate across the bay. The new ship, he promises her with a smile, will carry her home across the water under the stars. The sun begins to slide down over the Mediterranean. The sky above the bay turns the color of a bruised plum. Agrippina dresses in her finest jewelry, piece by piece. She steps into her litter. She is carried to her son's banquet, without any idea that the men pouring her wine have already made their final peace with the gods. She has no idea that the ship waiting for her in the harbor has been engineered to break apart. She is walking straight into the open jaws of a machine built to kill her, and the water in the bay is black, and the water in the bay is freezing cold. The Bay of Naples, in March of AD 59, is an ambush dressed as paradise. Thin columns of sulfur rise quietly from the volcanic cracks beneath the earth, lacing the sea air with a scent the nose learns to ignore after the first hour. The wealthiest families of Rome have carved their villas directly into the white cliffs along this coastline. They have terraced the rock into pleasure gardens and thermal baths where the stiff laws of the capital do not follow. This is Baiae. It is a landscape built for excess, for forgetting, for whispered treason between silk sheets. It is, conveniently, also the ideal stage on which to kill someone. Nero waits in the grand dining hall of his seaside villa. He watches his mother walk in through the tall, arched doorway. Agrippina does not enter like a returning sovereign. She enters with the slow, measuring tread of a veteran. Her eyes sweep the room before her feet finish crossing it. She takes inventory of the praetorians stationed along the walls. She reads the faces of the Greek servants. She measures the distance from the doorway to the main dining couches in careful steps. She has spent her entire adult life inside the Roman court. She knows that a banquet of reconciliation is, more often than not, the overture to an execution. She notes every detail. Then she sits down. The psychological warfare that unfolds across the dinner table is completely invisible to the servants carrying the platters, yet it is deafening for the two people at the center of it. Nero performs a masterclass in counterfeit affection. For years, he punished her by placing her in lesser seats at every public function. Tonight, he reverses it entirely. He seats her above his own couch, in the position of honor. He carves the choicest cuts of roasted meat with his own hand and lays them on her plate. He pours her Falernian wine personally. He leans toward her, drops his voice to a low murmur, and begins to reminisce. He talks about her, about childhood. He locks his eyes onto hers with an expression that is almost surgically indistinguishable from real devotion. Agrippina eats. She drinks the wine. She studies his performance like a theater critic studying a leading actor. She knows what he has been doing for the last 4 years. She knows he dismantled her political network piece by piece. She knows he pulled her Germanic bodyguards away from her door. She knows he shoved her out of the palace and into the suburbs. She does not actually believe the warmth in his voice is genuine. She believes something worse. She believes he has surrendered. She reads his fawning behavior as a political retreat. She tells herself that Poppaea must have failed to secure the marriage, that her son has finally accepted he cannot rule the Mediterranean without her brain behind his throne. Her ambition hijacks her survival instinct. She accepts the illusion because the illusion is shaped exactly like the future she wants to be true. The banquet stretches into the small hours of the night. The musicians pluck slow, low melodies out of gut-strung lyres. The oil lamps burn down to their last measure of fuel. Somewhere near midnight, Nero announces that it is time for her to return to her own villa across the water at Baiae. He rises from his couch and personally escorts her down the marble steps to the waiting harbor. Tacitus, writing later, records a detail about that specific night that is almost too perfect to be accidental. The sky was completely clear. The sea was glass. The gods themselves had handed Nero a flawless, star-lit canvas, leaving him no storm to blame, no rogue wave to point at, no weather to use as a scapegoat. The stillness of the water only amplifies the pressure in the air. Tied to the wooden dock is the custom-built galley. The frescoes painted along her hull glow in the torchlight. A luxurious rear cabin is sheltered under a heavy canopy, exactly the kind of private quarters worthy of an empress. The ship looks like a gift. The ship is a trap with a roof. Nero pulls her into a final embrace on the wooden planks of the dock. He holds her tight against his chest. He kisses her eyes. He kisses her chest. He lets the embrace run long. This is not a son saying goodnight to a mother. This is an executioner taking one last tactile inventory of a life he is about to extinguish from the face of the earth. He steps back. He watches her cross the gangplank. The plank is drawn away behind her. The oars strike the black water in practiced rhythm. Nero turns his back on the harbor and walks up the hill toward his villa, waiting to hear the sound of timber breaking in the distance. Inside the cabin, it is peaceful. Agrippina reclines on a lavish dining couch, the kind built with raised wooden sides along the length. Two people are in the cabin with her. A man named Creperius Gallus stands closer to the helm. Acerronia Pola, her most trusted lady-in-waiting, is seated at her feet. Acerronia is talking with joy in her voice. She is recounting the evening. She is telling Agrippina that her influence has been fully restored, that the emperor has come to his senses, that the cold, lonely years inside the house of Antonia are finally finished. Agrippina listens. She permits herself, just for a breath, the dangerous luxury of feeling victorious. Above their heads, the mechanism is activated. The loyal sailors on the upper deck pull the release ropes in unison. The hollow wooden pins holding up the heavy lead canopy snap exactly as designed. The roof drops down with the weight of an anvil falling through the air. The impact is instant. The lead crushes Creperius Gallus where he stands. He is dead before the sound of splintering wood has finished traveling across the water. The canopy continues falling toward Agrippina. She is saved by a simple piece of furniture. The dining sofa she is reclining on has been built with tall, reinforced wooden sides, almost like a shallow trough. The falling lead hammers into the raised edges of the couch instead of her body. The wood groans, cracks, but holds under the weight. The canopy comes to rest in a rigid tent right above her. She is pinned in the darkness, surrounded by wreckage, unable to move. But her spine is intact. Her skull is intact. She is alive. From that moment, the assassination plan begins unraveling in real time. The second phase is supposed to fire the instant the canopy falls. Anicetus built a complex hinge into the hull of the ship. At the right signal, the hinge releases. The boat cracks down the middle, and the entire vessel sinks in under a minute. The hinge jams. The mechanics refuse to trigger. The ship remains in one piece, drifting quietly on the calm water. Panic erupts on the deck. The crew is split down the middle. Only a small handful of sailors know they are participating in the murder of the Empress Mother. The vast majority of the oarsmen have no idea. When the canopy crashes down, those innocent sailors react on pure instinct and rush toward the cabin to pull survivors out. The assassins understand, in that moment, that they now have to sink the ship with their own bodies. They throw their weight onto one side of the hull, trying to capsize it by force. The ignorant sailors, seeing the ship tilting, react the way any crew would in any century. They throw their weight to the opposite side to stabilize her. What unfolds on that deck is a silent, desperate tug of war between two factions of men, one trying to save the ship and one trying to sink it. the vessel lists violently. The angle gets too steep for anyone to keep their footing. Men slide. The passengers are thrown out of the shattered cabin straight into the freezing water. Acerronia hits the sea. She comes up disoriented. She sees the silhouettes of the sailors leaning over the railing of the tilted ship above her. She makes the worst decision of her life. She assumes the men on the deck are her rescuers. She raises one arm above the water. She screams into the night air with all the breath she has left. I am Agrippina. I am the mother of the emperor. Save me. The sailors hear the target's name rise out of the water. They do not throw her a rope. They reach instead for their heavy wooden oars and their iron-tipped boat hooks. They lean out over the side. They start bringing the oars down on the woman in the water. They strike her across the skull. They keep striking until the screaming stops completely, and the body goes under and does not come back up. Agrippina watches her servant die from just a few meters away. She is floating quietly in the black water. A glancing blow from the falling canopy clipped her shoulder on the way down, but she is breathing. She watches, and in that single second, she understands the entire architecture of the night. The polished smiles, the lingering kisses on the dock, the custom ship with the heavy canopy, the sailors murdering a woman for claiming the name Agrippina. She realizes, out there in the cold, that she gave birth to her own executioner. She does not make a sound. She does not raise her hand. She does not call out to anyone. She treads water inside the shadow cast by the ship, letting the assassins believe the job is done. Once the galley drifts far enough away, she turns her body toward the distant shoreline. She is a woman in her 40s. She is injured. She is weighed down by the heavy, soaking fabric of an aristocratic gown. The water of the Mediterranean in March pulls heat out of a human body within minutes, but she was forged inside the slaughterhouse of her own family's history. She refuses to give Nero the satisfaction of finding a corpse in the morning. She swims. Stroke by stroke, she pushes through the cold, navigating by the constellations turning above her. Eventually, she reaches the gentler water of the Lucrine Lake. Small fishing boats are out casting their nets in the early hours. The fishermen hear the splashing. They pull the shivering, bleeding Empress Mother up out of the dark. They escort her back to her villa at Baiae. The first gray light of dawn is just starting to bleed into the sky. She walks into her private chambers on her own feet. She orders her maids to clean the wound on her shoulder and bind it with warm bandages. She sits down in the stillness of her own room. She begins calculating her next move. She knows Nero is waiting across the bay for the confirmation that she is dead. She knows that if she openly declares that he tried to murder her, he will simply send the legions to finish what the ship failed to accomplish. She cannot flee. She cannot raise an army in time. She cannot physically fight him. So she reaches for the only weapon she has left: psychological warfare. She summons her most trusted freedman, a man named Agrippina. She dictates a letter to him. The prose is a small masterpiece of political maneuvering. She writes to her son, informing him that by the mercy of the gods and the good fortune of his reign, she has miraculously survived a tragic accident at sea. She tells him, sweetly, that there is no need for alarm. She asks him kindly not to rush to her bedside, as she requires rest to recover from her minor injuries. The surface of the letter is calm, domestic, almost tender. The subtext is radioactive. Translated into honesty, it reads, "I know exactly what you did. Your plan failed. I am still breathing. Your move." Across the bay, Nero's mental state is disintegrating in real time. The sun has come up, and Anicetus has still not sent the signal confirming the kill. Nero paces the marble floor of his villa. He chews his nails down into the skin. He imagines his mother, right now, assembling a mutiny. He pictures her walking into the Praetorian camp, pulling her gown aside to show the soldiers the bruise on her shoulder, demanding his head on a silver dish. He is paralyzed, frozen by the size of the beast he failed to kill. The heavy doors of his study swing open. Agrippinus is escorted inside. He bows. He presents the sealed letter from Agrippina. Nero snaps. The last tether holding his grip on reality gives way entirely. He does not break the seal on the letter. He does not read a single word. He stares at Agrippinus. He reaches into his own tunic, draws out a short iron dagger, and lets it drop from his hand onto the mosaic floor between the freedman's feet. He points at the weapon. He starts screaming for the palace guards. He accuses Agrippinus of being an assassin, sent from Baiae to murder the Emperor of Rome on the direct orders of his mother. He orders the man seized and dragged away in chains. The ruler of the known world is now planting evidence on a confused messenger like a panicking thug cornered in an alley. Nero calls for his advisors. Seneca and Burrus enter the room. They find the emperor hyperventilating. He confesses the entire operation to them. He tells them about the ship, the canopy, the jammed hinge. He tells them she survived. He tells them she is sitting in her villa right now, writing letters, and she knows. He begs them for a solution before she burns the empire to the ground with him still inside it. Seneca looks at Burrus. The philosopher and the soldier hold each other's gaze in a long, grim silence. Both of them realize, at the same instant, that the Rubicon has been crossed. The regime cannot survive an open war between a mother and a son of the Julio-Claudian house. Seneca finally breaks the silence. He asks the prefect one direct question. Will the Praetorian Guard follow an order to march on her villa and kill her tonight? Burrus does not even hesitate. He shakes his head. No. The men of the guard are sworn to the whole house of the Caesars. They worship the memory of her father, Germanicus. They will never raise a sword against his daughter. Not for any emperor alive. The military refuses to act. The advisors have nothing left to offer. The silence returns to the room, heavier this time. Then a figure steps forward from the shadows near the doorway. Anicetus, the architect of the broken ship. He looks at the weeping emperor on the chair. He speaks with the cold administrative tone of a man filing a requisition. He tells Nero to let him finish the job he started. He asks for a small detachment of fleet marines, men who answer directly to him, men who do not care about Germanicus, or his memory, or his bloodline. Nero stops crying. He looks up at the naval officer like a drowning man suddenly offered a plank. He grips Anicetus by both shoulders. He declares, in front of Seneca and Burrus, that today is the first day he has actually been given the empire, and the man who handed it to him was a Greek freedman. Anicetus wastes no time. He rounds up a triarch, a ship's captain, and a naval centurion. They assemble a small unit of marines armed with wooden clubs and short swords. They march out of the villa and head north along the coastal road from Baiae to Baiae. They arrive at Agrippina's villa just as the long shadows of evening begin to stretch across the grounds. The perimeter of the estate is quiet. A few loyal clients and household slaves are gathered near the gates, waiting for news of her recovery. The Marines smash through the timber doors without warning. The crowd outside scatters in all directions, screaming. The soldiers lock down the exits. Anicetus and his two officers draw their blades and walk straight down the central corridor toward the imperial bedroom at the back of the villa. Inside that chamber, the light is dying. A single oil lamp burns on a bronze stand beside the bed. One last loyal slave girl is still in the room with her mistress. The girl hears the heavy tread of military boots coming across the mosaic floor of the corridor outside. Her courage abandons her. She bolts for the door and runs, leaving Agrippina alone on the bed. Agrippina watches her servant flee. She speaks, very quietly, to the empty room. "So even you abandon me." The door of the bedroom swings open. Anicetus steps through. The triarch and the centurion flank him on either side. They spread around the bed in a small, practiced arc. They do not recite charges. They do not unroll a decree of execution. They do not read anything aloud. They are contract killers arriving to close an account. Agrippina does not beg. She does not cry. She does not scream for mercy, or for her son, or for the gods. She looks up at the three armed men standing over her. In the last moments of her life, she decides to remain the most dangerous woman in the room. She locks eyes with Anicetus. "If you have come to visit me," she says, her voice level, "go and tell my son that I am recovering well. If you have come here to commit a crime, I refuse to believe my son ordered this. He would never command matricide. It is a final, brilliant psychological strike. She is stripping the assassins of the satisfaction of watching her crumble. She is forcing them to kill her while publicly pretending, even to themselves, that they are acting on their own." The triarch steps forward. He raises the heavy wooden club above his head. He brings it down across her skull. The blow fractures the bone. She collapses sideways onto the mattress. The centurion moves up to the edge of the bed. He draws his gladius. The short, broad Roman blade catches the last flicker of the oil lamp. Blood is running into her eyes from the wound on her head. Her vision is smearing. But the daughter of Germanicus is not going to die lying down. She forces her body to sit up one more time. She looks the centurion straight in the face. She takes the fabric of her tunic in both hands. She tears the garment open at the waist, exposing the bare skin of her abdomen. Then she issues her final order to the Roman military: "Ventrum feri," strike the womb. She is commanding them to drive the steel into the exact place that produced the monster who ordered her death. She is, in her last second, hijacking the history books. She is making certain that for the rest of time, every Roman child who hears this story will know that Nero's worst sin was the murder of his own origin. The centurion drives the blade forward. The steel punches into her abdomen. She falls backward into the blood-soaked cushions. She does not rise again. The body of the most powerful woman in the history of the Roman Empire is not given a funeral worthy of her name. Her corpse is dragged out later that night and laid across one of the dining couches of the villa. Nero arrives to view the remains personally. The ancient sources record that he walked slowly around the makeshift bier, examining her limbs with clinical detachment, and muttered that he had never realized, until that moment, how beautiful his mother's body really was. She is burned on a cheap pyre the next evening. Her ashes are covered over casually with dirt beside the road leading toward Misenum. No marble tomb, no monument, no inscription, no eulogy. Nero got exactly what he wanted. He cut the psychological tether. He broke out of the cage. He now owns the entire known world with no one left alive to hold a leash on him. And the act of killing his own creator fractures something in his mind that can never be repaired. Suetonius writes that the emperor never again slept an entire night through. He confessed to his closest friends that he was haunted by her ghost. He claimed he could hear a lone trumpet blowing from the hills above her shallow grave at night. A thin, relentless note echoing across the bay, refusing to let him forget what his hands had done. He tore down the architecture of his suffocation, and in the empty space where the cage used to stand, he built himself a new prison, one with no walls and no door. He became the architect of his own ruin. Thank you for staying with me to the very end. The algorithm does not love stories like this one. It actively suppresses the real, unfiltered darkness of history. The only way we beat that suppression is if you take action right now. Tap the subscribe button, hit like on this video. Send it to the one person in your life who needs to see how power actually works underneath the marble. You just watched another premium documentary from Ancestral, your ultimate history hub on YouTube. Do not close the tab yet. The descent is not over. Look at the video appearing on your screen right now. Click it. Watch it. It is your next required step into the dark archive. Walk into the next chapter.